Dialed in
to Bucks and Brews, you might hear something
you can use.
like tips on your cash or tips on the suds.
You're gonna want to
The
use
smarts of these studs.
because they know the
And
brews.
they know the Bucks, and they know they can't help the stubborn fucks.
So listen up, because shit's not funny.
Save yourself some
Beer money. Bucks
and brews.
Bucks and
Bucks
Brews.
and brews.
Bucks and Brews.
Welcome back to Bucks and Brews. We're going to be a little different this week, Nick.
There we go.
We're not going to actually moderate this. We're going to hand over the reins. We can talk about what we're drinking. I know three of us are drinking almost nothing. So Nick, I'll let you go first because it's your normal.
Yeah, I'm back from the cruise where I had a nice booze time, and I'm drinking more Bud Lights. Let's say it's I don't know, just a couple for tonight. I'm gonna start losing some weight apparently, so
I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Mike and I talked about that too.
we'll see what happens.
Jim, my friend, Jim is joining us. He will be one of our moderators tonight.
I'm drinking, starting out with a Lagunitas Hoppy Refresher, which is a kind of a hop water, 0 calories, 0 alcohol, and a groovy IPA, thanks to my sponsor, Mike Benson.
Yes.
Or tonight's sponsor, I should say, Mike Benson. Also, this is a low calorie, 0 alcohol IPA. They're both wonderful.
Myself, I'm taking a page out of one of my oldest friend's book, but I'm not drinking City of Anything water. I just have some bottled water here.
It probably comes from city of somewhere.
So yeah, it's just not here. Mike, what do you have?
I'm kind of mixing up a few different things. I'm going to start with a Reed's ginger beer, which is yummy. It's one of the spiciest ginger beers I've been able to find since the old like Stewart's one stopped being made. I've got some fresh from the mill apple cider, and then I'm going to take a page out of the other book and I'm going to drink City of Portage tap water.
Professor, what do you have, my friend?
I have the usual in my very hands, a glass of the City of Lansing tap water, the best around.
We're currently joined by Josh Hilgert, who is running for the 9th Circuit Court in Kalamazoo. Josh, how are you this evening?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much, David.
Very welcome. I don't know if you're drinking anything. Typically, we drink beer while we do this show, but as you've kind of garnered, some of us are trying to save our livers after a week on a boat.
Oh, well, it's been, I shudder to say, as a aspiring sober judge, I'm drinking a side yard Cascade that was provided to me by my childhood neighbor for this very event.
Cheers.
Twin Dales. So
Let's see.
Excellent.
Cheers.
So I wanted to start this episode with Jim and David both giving their credentials since they're basically moderating tonight. So Jim, you go ahead and start since you're next to me.
All right, that sounds good. Yep. Again, I'm Jim Lowry. I graduated in 1994 with a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Michigan. And during all of my college years and a few thereafter, I actually ran political campaigns for a living. Started out I want to say it was 1990, working for a candidate who nobody thought could ever win the governor's seat, and he did. That was John Engler. And then 92, I worked for the Bush Quayle campaign. Spent some time at the White House as well, and then did a couple of other statewide races. Have done a lot of local races since then as well, but during that time, state senate, state house, a few judgeships, and some county commission races as well. So and I like to say that I didn't leave the Republican Party. The Republican Party left me. They left me behind a long time ago. More so recently, as someone who's a strong believer in democracy and elections, as well as civil libertarian. That's not a place I find a home anymore, and haven't for about 25 years.
David, you're up.
All right. I'm David Seawick, and I teach history at a college in Michigan, Lansing Community College. I've been there for 16 years. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in history. My undergraduate minor was political science from Central Michigan University. And then I also have a postgraduate diploma in history from the University of Strathclyde. which is in Glasgow, Scotland.
Yes, it
And
is.
I also work in the corporate training division of Lansing Community College. So I work a lot with area businesses.
Just as an aside, our first guest, Josh, might know one of my longest friends, someone I've known for about 45 years now, Chris Denny, who's the head of the Public Defender's Office in Kent County. And took he's been doing that for almost his entire legal career, but took a break from that to help get public defender offices started up in other parts of the state. And he's working for the state of Michigan. So I'm not sure, Josh, if you know Chris or not, but he and I have been friends for about 45 years. We've known each other since kindergarten.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, I do know Chris. Chris was at the MIDC
Yep.
when we were getting started, taking that break that you described. So, yeah, and then frequently, we chat with Chris about, we run into issues or, anything. We're like, hey, what do you do when you run into this? So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's great.
Known Chris for a long time. Yeah, he is a good guy.
Josh, quick question, and I'll let them go. But are you currently an incumbent, or are you running for a new position?
I'm running for a new position. People rarely run against incumbent judges because we're all lawyers, and then we have to practice in front of that judge after we lose. So, so there are two open seats in the circuit court. One, Judge Gorsalitz, he's aged out, as they say. You can't run again after you're 70 in Michigan. And the other is Judge Lipsey. So that created the two vacancies in the circuit court. There's one in district court too. So it's a big year in Kalamazoo County for judicial races, as the signs may tell.
I have a friend who's an incumbent judge who is running unopposed and locally. I won't give names on this, but let's just say he works mostly in family court, which will probably point you to exactly. I know you're Scots. It'll probably point you right to who I'm talking about.
It's a small world.
Well, and Josh, tell us a little bit about, your background.
You caught me drinking a beer.
He said
That happens.
Drink, baby. We're like waiters.
But I grew up here in Kalamazoo. I went to school just outside of Chicago at a place called Scheimer College. It's a small liberal arts school where it's all great books like Socratic Method, totally unemployable degree. But good, lots of philosophy and dead white men. And then after that, worked in Washington, D.C. For a while for People for the American Way, which was a civil liberties advocacy organization, but probably left-leaning by most descriptions, although those descriptions have less meaning, I think, currently than they did back then. And worked there for a number of years on voting rights, doing analysis on judicial nominees. And then I worked for an international environmental organization on the condition that they let me, after a couple of years, work remotely from Kalamazoo. I plotted with my brother to move back here to Kalamazoo. He was in Memphis. I moved back here and got my law degree at Michigan State University. And I commuted and moved here with my wife. And after that, clerked in the Ninth Circuit. That involved writing opinions and orders for the court and doing the research on the cases. And after that clerkship, worked at Legal Aid for a number of years. And that was a real eye-opener, getting to know people firsthand and working with them who were really poor and struggling mightily. It was a great education, which kind of led me to jump in when Kalamazoo County announced it was turning indigent defense over to a nonprofit if a nonprofit would bid for the contract. So I formed a nonprofit with the aid of criminal defense experts, mental health experts, community leaders, and bid for the contract, and that was Kalamazoo Defender, and got the contract. That's Kalamazoo's current indigent defense provider, the public defender. So independent nonprofit, that's kind of unusual. Chris Denny, as you mentioned earlier, he has a nonprofit that's actually been around for a while.
Yep.
It's kind of an outlier. So we joined him, and then we added to the office, not just the public defense, but a whole office floor of service providers from around Kalamazoo County that staff our office so that they can work with our clients kind of as a team in a Mayo Clinic kind of fashion. You got your housing person, you got your mental health person, you got your criminal defense attorney who can work together to try to figure out how to get some of the intractable problems that so many of our clients are struggling with when they get into the criminal justice system, so that they don't keep cycling back and maybe can avoid long-term incarceration. And that's what I'm doing now. I currently run that organization.
I will throw this out here real quick. I wanted to give a shout out to Corrine, who actually set this up for us. So shout out to her. Great job of her texting me back and forth trying to get you on, Josh. I know we have a few questions. We did just get Joe to join. Joe,
Howdy.
Hey, Joe.
we're
Welcome.
Yep.
you're getting scam calls.
Maybe.
We'll bring in a few minutes here, Joe. We're just talking to Josh, who's running for the 9th Circuit Court in Kalamazoo.
Oh, yeah.
And I know we had a few questions, I believe. I don't know whether David or Jim want to jump in here.
Dave, you can go ahead and go first.
Sure, I was very fascinated with the introduction that you gave us, Josh. Your story is, I think it's interesting. It's taking you some different places around the country, and the one that struck me the most is the indigent defense. Well, not only the way that Kalamazoo County had the route they decided to go in offering that constitutionally mandated service, but the way that you came up with a creative solution, it looks like, to the problem they were facing. And you know, I work at a college that has a lot of screens around campus, and on one of the screens today popped up that it was in this day in 1948 that Harry S. Truman defeated Thomas Dewey, and we're all probably familiar with the photo. It's a very famous one of Truman holding up a Chicago newspaper that has the big bold headline, Dewey defeats Truman. And of course, that's not what happened. Harry S. Truman won and ended up serving another 4 years in office. And what made me think of bringing that up here is that you have this election coming up, and polling is where I'm going with this. So polling in the 1940s was starting to become a precise science. The Gallup group did, I think, the first presidential poll in the 1936 presidential election. They phoned up 800 people in Manhattan. They predicted a 95% voting rate for the guy running against Roosevelt. And that would have been the result they would have gotten if they called up 900 people in Manhattan back then. Nowadays, it would be much different, but the poll didn't exactly predict the election. Roosevelt won re-election. The 1948 election, the polling was a little bit more precise, but it still looked like that Truman was going to lose. And part of what Truman ran on in that election was really a mandate of the parts of the New Deal program that the Republican Party had suggested they might pick away at should they get in power. And so Truman used that as a mandate that I won, it was close, but I won. And so parts of the New Deal are here to stay. Now, not everything he was going to do, he failed at national health system, actually, which is one of the things that he tried very hard to get. But the American Medical Association was afraid doctors would take a pay cut, so they lobbied heavily against it. Where I'm going with this is when you, and I'll put this question out there really to anybody here, but Josh, I can ask you as well. When a candidate for whatever the public office is ends up winning an election, our system is one that the guy that gets 50% plus one of the vote wins. And so there's this whole idea of mandate out there. If you win a close election, is there a responsibility amongst the candidate to sort of temper his mood of mandate and respect the fact that the vote was actually rather divided? And if so, do we see evidence of this actually happening nowadays when you have close elections that turn out one way or another?
Well, that's a fascinating question. In terms of, individual moral choices and civic obligation. I guess we certainly don't see. I don't know. I would. So I'll just answer it. In terms of how I look at it. That I ran suggesting that I would do particular things. And so I do feel some obligation to do those things. I think one place where I have good fortune that people running for other offices don't have is that my job is vastly less political, or should be. I would expect in my case it would be. I mean, I'm focused on the things I'm talking about, how to create better public service through the courts, transparency, community input, those kinds of things, in a system that is often obscured to the public. What does circuit court mean, and what does district court mean, and where's their jurisdiction, and all these things that I'm discovering, even more than I imagined, are completely unknown to a great many of the voters and the public generally. So just trying to have it be a responsive system. And I think generally I haven't run into a lot of opposition that appears to be ideologically based on for that one, nor any seeming objection from members of the bench or other candidates. So I unfortunately my circumstances are not is juicy to engage that question, which I think is a good one. It really does, it really does ask a number of inquiries, I think, especially when you get into political offices. I don't know
Sure.
if that was considered a dodge. You can refocus that if you want.
No, I don't think it's a dodge at all. I think it gives me confidence, actually, to hear that judicial elections are not degraded, one might say, or changed, if one is a little more optimistic looking at it, to a point of extreme partisanship. And you see some judicial candidates are a little bit more out in the open than others. And here in Lansing, we had a very well-known trial that happened a few years ago with the case of Larry Nasser, who was a MSU sports medicine professor, and he was accused and ultimately found guilty of just all kinds of horrific crimes, dozens, if not hundreds, of abuse cases against minors. And his sentencing hearing turned out to be one in which the judge who oversaw the hearing, Rosemary Aquilina, she became kind of a national celebrity as a result of that. And it created a public persona on a local judge that probably, I would say, 99% of judges in the country would never be in that circumstance. But I think most of the time, yes, these are sort of very important positions that nobody knows what they do.
Joe, I'd love to hear you weigh in on this, and I'd also like you to kind of introduce yourself.
Oh yeah, no worries. My name's Joe Spalding. I live in Holland. I'm running for county commission in Ottawa County, District 2. It covers most of Holland Township. But professionally, I'm a campaign strategist, and I do a lot of opposition research, a lot of tracking. And I think this question is fascinating for me specifically because I'm running against a woman named Lucy Ebel. She's part of a faction called Ottawa Impact that I think we'll talk about a little bit later. But Lucy happened to show up for a City of Holland meeting. Again, we both live in Holland Township, not in the City of Holland. But she showed up in a City of Holland meeting to speak out against their ordinance that would have provided protection for LGBTQ residents when it comes to housing and employment. Statewide, we have the Elliott-Larsen Act that protects those things for most categories of marginalized people in the state. But at the time, and our courts have ruled differently since then, but at the time, for LGBTQ folks in Michigan, they had no housing and employment protections. Like legally, your landlord could kick you out just because they thought you were gay. So Holland, stepped up to the plate, passed an ordinance to do this, and my opponent went across town to the city hall and spoke out against this. And when she was speaking out against this ordinance, to bring us back to the question at hand, she was really, really mad that the city council, who was freshly elected, was fulfilling their campaign promise to pass that ordinance. She spoke out in opposition to campaign promises getting fulfilled. And maybe there's an argument there that's a little bit more eloquent that can be made, that David kind of outlined, when it comes to a responsibility to the rest of the electorate when you win by 50% plus one. But the way she presented it was that it was a personal affront, that they were fulfilling the campaign promises that they had made to get elected. And that's the other side of the coin, because the reality is democracy isn't won by miles. In the way we do it in America in our two-party system, democracy is won by inches or centimeters. So those 50% one things, that matters to folks in a lot of ways when it comes to people who are facing eviction or facing not getting employment because of who they love. I think that kind of like distills everything down to a really, really condensed point. That sometimes, that it's you want to have a little bit of cooperation. You want to make sure you reach across the aisle and move forward when you're passing a budget. But if you're running on something that's tied to the very core of human dignity, and you get elected on that, you have a moral obligation to fulfill, that promise. I think, and I think that's a clear difference between myself and my opponent. But moreover, I think that there's a larger philosophical question here that's, I think, fascinating. I haven't talked about this stuff since college. It's awesome.
So I kind of have a related question, and for both of you, I think, particularly in the last probably 6 years or so now, we're starting to really see an erosion of the the public side of public service, right? As you're alluding to, Joe, and I think as we've seen a lot recently, there's this kind of Steve Bannon, a strategy of kind of taking over and creating an authoritarian theocracy from the ground up. And you see people like you're just describing, Joe, or you see people at school board meetings talking about banning books and really campaigning now, actively campaigning in West Michigan with a platform or taking positions of not serving the entire all the public, right? And I mentioned during my introduction, I was a Republican at one time, but I've always been more of a civil liberties, kind of civil libertarian sort of person, and understood that, there's a line, there are some lines that aren't to be crossed. And I just would like if both of you kind of talk about that, what is it that you see as your, or what would your approach, was your responsibility toward maybe kind of putting the public back in public service?
My answer will be less interesting, because I obviously we're not supposed to talk about issues directly. We might rule on, so that involves all kinds of things, church and state, bodily autonomy, everything, but I will say, just observing, one of the things that I had done in Washington, the organization I worked for also, was kind of looking at the expansion of televangelists and the Christian Coalition and their influence, particularly on the Republican Party, and how well organized and what a powerful machine it was, and how that kind of seemed to dissipate, by late in the 90s, and even with the election of George W. Bush, it was not as prominent as it appeared with Reagan or the first Bush. But there is a kind of a similar, a parallel kind of factioning, it would appear. So old things are new again, it would seem. It certainly is going to be a very important development for the judiciary, because I believe all kinds of questions are coming to the fore and will continue to do so, that are gonna visit territory that was once thought long settled.
Yeah, and just before you answer, Joe, if I could just a quick follow-up to that, Josh. I was really intrigued what you're saying about your service with the indigent felony cases and things like that, right? With the public defenders. Does that play into your, I guess, sort of your approach in terms of serving the entire community, right? I'm not necessarily talking about from a partisan perspective, but you've mentioned like how you've set up your office to not just include indigent defense cases, but also you're trying to be more transparent and things like that. What from what you've done with the public defender's office in Kalamazoo County, would you then bring into the judiciary?
That's a great question. So yeah, I think one of the important aspects, certainly that I learned when I was at Legal Aid, that we incorporated into our kind of fabric at the public defender office, is that the people who come through, we get 5,000 cases a year at the public defender office, which makes it one of the biggest law firms in Western Michigan. It's a lot of people, and the majority of them are suffering from mental health issues that are unaddressed with the cut in mental health services that took place many years ago here in Michigan. So police become the frontline mental health providers. And people with trauma, high ACE scores, adverse childhood experiences, so we're encountering people, they're members of our community that are not fully participating in our community. Consequently, they're finally getting noticed, so to speak, when they start entering into the criminal justice system through an addiction or a mental health outburst, or theft of whatever, when they're all also grindingly poor. It's not like they're just below the poverty line and we have like a smooth cascade of people. They are mostly abject poverty as their experience. So it occurred, to me that identifying this group of people as part of our community, that they're not a problem for our community, they're part of our community that are creating issues, social issues that we have to deal with. And so building on Kalamazoo's legacy with drug court, which it was a pioneer of nationally 30 years ago, building on programs that try to catch people before they get too involved, reduce tomorrow's victims by, as soon as people start engaging. And in the juvenile court too, how do we identify problems and try to solve them for our community members when they first start making that contact? I think that we can take some of that model from the defender. How do you bring in service providers around the community? Again, the courts bring ISK, Integrated Services of Kalamazoo, into the mental health recovery court. If we address things beyond the mental health, like also the housing, brought in community support so that there were people that are hanging out in the neighborhoods with these people supporting them, there might be ways to get higher success rates and reduce recidivism.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you. Joe, back to you. Sorry, I didn't mean to throw that follow-up in there, but how to put the public back in public service?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I'm just briefly, real quick, Josh, that's awesome, the work that you're doing. I just want to commend you for that. And I don't know how familiar everybody in Kalamazoo is with everybody else, but Reagan Samara was a college professor of mine. She's the only one that gave me an A plus in international security studies or something in terrorism. And then also Cassie Evanson was a high school classmate of mine. So
all right, well, I'll say hi to Reagan for you and thank her again on your behalf. Yeah, I worked at Legal Aid with Reagan, and certainly talked with her a great deal as I was putting together this plan.
No, I appreciate that. Now, when it comes to bringing back the wow, when I talk about public service, I think that if there's any place they can get the question right, I think that it's in West Michigan, and for the very reasons that I think all of us are kind of seeing in our communities. And that's, I guess, the easy example for me is that the current sitting Republican County Commission in my commission district and I have talked, Joe Bauman and I, and frankly, the way that the Ottawa Impact candidates, and this is mostly at the Ottawa County Commission level, they have candidates running for school board across the board, ran for their primaries. They were jerks. They were really, really mean to the incumbents, right? Like they like inappropriate, like threatening emails left and right, just like horrific stuff.
Oh, showing up at people's houses. I mean, in Kent County, we've had people showing up at their opponents' houses and things like that as well. Yeah.
And like I say, I do professional opposition research for a living, right? Like I consider it my job to deep six candidates to stop them from being bad politicians. And it was disgusting. So, I mean, that's the framework for like what's going on the ground. But the backdrop to that is different, right? Ottawa County moved 9 points away from Donald Trump between 2016 and 2020 when he was running against Hillary Clinton, he was running against Joe Biden. Nobody, and I'm saying this as someone who is going to vote Democrat straight down the ticket, nobody thinks that that's because Joe Biden was such a powerful and compelling candidate, right? Like this was a moral question for voters in West Michigan. And the Republicans and the Democrats understand that. And, you know, frankly, I'm not the world's biggest cheerleader for everything that capitalism has done. You know, I'm a true millennial in that sense, I guess. But when it comes to West Michigan, we see some really, really clear historical examples of businesses stepping up to the plate and changing the community in positive ways. We see things like New Holland Brewery going to bat for their beer tent. And everyone thought that the whole city of Holland was going to have a meltdown if they sold beer at a beer tent during tulip time. Nothing the sort happened. And, that's just with beer. You know, culturally, Holland has become a lot more LGBTQ friendly. I'm a Latino, and frankly, growing up here, it was a little bit scary on that front. And now, that type of permeable racism isn't. It doesn't really exist at that level. There's still very real racism. There's still historic, laws and regulations that were built by what I consider to be racist city councils way back in the day or whatever, but it's not permeated throughout the culture. And that's due to, I think, because of business. And when it comes to the types of stuff that, frankly, is unacceptable when it comes to running a campaign, I think it's going to be the same type of things are going to be happening when it comes to running a county or running townships or the city. And I think the people are going to respond. You know, we got 2 years, 6 months if we want to do a recall, 2 years to see what happens. And if we're wrong, if I'm wrong, and it's not like that, and the new commission is like the best thing that's ever happened to West Michigan, and tourists flock here, talent flocks here to run the engineering jobs for all our new wonderful battery facilities that we're getting. Then I'll happily eat crow on top of a giant pile of money like everybody else. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think that we're going to lose tourists, we're going to lose talent because we're going to get harm to our reputation done when things like the diversity program at the county goes away because the people who got voted in didn't like diversity. And I think that when that happens, we end up having an electoral response. And I think it's going to be huge. We don't tolerate bigotry in West Michigan. And it's just not a thing that we're happy to accept anymore. So,
well, and I kind of want to hit on this because I think the thing that worries me the most is all of these very extreme candidates that are running for school boards. If they get a hold of the school boards, they have control over curriculum. If they have control over curriculum, we have a big problem. And Jim is very big on higher education, as are Mike and I. David obviously is huge on higher education because he has so many degrees I can't count them. Thoughts on how we stop this proliferation into the school boards?
I'll take that one for a moment.
I thought you might.
Yeah, and I did an interview with the local newspaper a couple of weeks ago, and they ran a feature story on the 50th anniversary of busing. So desegregation busing in the city of Lansing. And in 1971 was when the decision was handed down by the Supreme Court that ultimately precipitated the integrated busing. And the reason why I bring that up now is because you had the result of that, the immediate result was an absolute firestorm of opposition, and you had entire school boards recalled. The city of Lansing, most of their school board was recalled after they implemented a busing program going off of the court decisions. And you had such immediate, extremely passionate reaction to that you had situations not that different than now in terms of people turning up who normally wouldn't at a seemingly innocuous school board meeting that was no longer innocuous. It was sort of the opposite. And the school board elections then turned into equally combative events when that happened. Now, fast forward the hands of time, 50 years later, and the interesting thing about this is now you have school board elections that are extremely politicized. I live here in Lansing, and not in the city of Lansing, but we have a school board in a town not far from here called Grand Ledge. And Grand Ledge is David and Mike, you'll get this. It's a lot like Plainwell, okay? And pretty much the same proximity to Lansing as the Plainwell is to Kalamazoo, and similar economic relationship. And Grand Ledge has undergone a big transformation over the last few years, especially because of schools of choice. So this gets me to kind of what you were asking, David, when you're talking about curriculum, and once the school board gains control of this, they can control the curriculum, and then all bets are off. Well, it's interesting because schools of choice has taken a totally different dynamic that never existed before and inserted it into school districts like Grand Ledge. So school of choice has been around for a while in Michigan. I actually think it goes back almost 20 years. And it means that if you want to send your child to a school out of the district, if that school has a seat for your child, has the means to provide the education for him, and you can get the child to school, you can do it. And so people are not a lot. It's not like it's every parent, but there's a fair amount of parents that take advantage of this. And so you have kids from the city of Lansing that have been going to Grand Ledge Public Schools. And that has totally changed the dynamic within the school. But see, who gets to elect the school board? It's only the people that live in the district.
Right.
So now you have children that are going to a school, but then their parents don't get to have a say in who elects the school board. And so what's happening is this disconnect is developing, and it's not only because of school choice. Politics obviously play a big role in this too, where regardless of school of choice, people within a district are starting to use the avenue of the school board as a means of fighting all of these social causes that have made their way into politics at every level. And I think that the idea of a school board controlling curriculum is one that has always been controversial, because you have curriculum standards that are set by the State Board of Education, but then you also have local control. So school boards can take up issues such as this. And with the K-12 school, there isn't the latitude of, let's just say, academic freedom that exists to a greater extent, although it's not a carte blanche academic freedom at an institution of higher ed. The problem I have with this is what I worry about, is Michigan has had a history of being a state where the state legislature and local school boards have not taken the direct hand that other states have in deciding curriculum. So the Texas state legislature, the lawmakers, they decide what the curriculum is in Texas public schools, right down to the textbooks. A few years ago, they decided that Thomas Jefferson was out and Ronald Reagan was in. And they made the decision, and that's what the books that were going to be allowed in Texas public schools were to say. State of Michigan has a curriculum that's set by the State Board of Education that has to be agreed to by the state legislature, but it's a curriculum that's specific to the standardized tests that the schools are required to administer. So it's not the depth that a place like Texas would have. My concern is it may get to that point. And people are nowadays bantering about a lot of things in school board meetings. Joe, you mentioned one of them, LGBTQ rights. Critical race theory is a word that every time I hear it mentioned, the person mentioning it probably has absolutely no idea what it means. None whatsoever, have never read a single book on it, nor care to. And therefore, you have people making extremely uninformed decisions out of either sheer ignorance or a combination of sheer ignorance and overtly political ambition. And that is going to have a very detrimental impact on children.
Follow-up question I have, but before I ask that question, Joe, I do have one follow-up for you. So part of the tradition here on Bucks and Brews, or as I think we're calling it tonight, votes and views, is that we share what we're drinking with the crowd. So if you could just tell us what's in the bottle there.
This is Dragon's Milk Reserve
Awesome.
Triple Mash. It's delicious. You're nodding. You know what it is.
I thought I
It's-
recognized the bottle, but I couldn't be sure.
I just cleaned out my car this weekend, and for Halloween, all of a sudden I found this bottle that was a Dragon's Milk like snickerdoodle and cocoa nibs and all, and I was like, oh, this is great. I was like, I'm so glad this was under my seat. I was like, there we go. My buddy's like, that's been in your car for 2 months, and I was like, well, it was under the seat. I didn't know it was there. Who goes under their seat that often, right?
You're still gonna drink it.
I already drank it.
Oh, of
I got
course.
drank on Halloween. So so you have a follow-up
I do, yeah.
question?
Just
Okay.
so Josh and Joe, you both are obviously on the ballot, and election day being 6 days away. Nationally, there's a lot of focus on Michigan because reproductive health care is on the ballot with Proposal 3. My question for both of you is democracy on the ballot this time around, and why or why not?
I mean, democracy is always on the ballot, I think, and I'm sorry I'm jumping right in here, but democracy is always on the ballot. I think when it comes to the, especially when it comes to the governor's seat, for some reason in Michigan, that seems to be a critical role. I got my kickstart in Michigan politics. I mean, I've been working in politics for a few years at the time, but I got my kickstart working as the strategist behind Proposal 2 that ended gerrymandering in Michigan in 2018. And I think that a lot of the work that went into the language of Proposal 2, which was before I started on that campaign, my work was mostly on building their petition program. But the work that went into building that language was work that they called Engler proofing it, because the governor has a lot of capability of moving budgets around, moving departments around, moving organizations within departments around that can undermine the way that a ballot initiative can work. Now, real briefly, Michigan's constitution begins with the words, all political power is inherent in the people. And that was a key phrase when it came to the Supreme Court decision over whether or not the anti-gerrymandering proposal was going to move forward to be on the ballot. And part of that framework is the idea that the ballot initiative process itself in Michigan is a core democratic process that is real, absolute democracy inside the state. And the governor, frankly, has a lot of wiggle room to either allow that process to go forward organically or to intervene. When we see someone like Governor Whitmer, where she will step up and she will file lawsuits when like the 1931 law kicks in, for instance. But when it came to the ballot initiatives, even the opposition ballot initiatives, there were traditional fights where Mark Brewer would try to go to the courts and say, hey, their wording is off here. They messed up and we need to reject the whole thing. And the courts would put him and Haw, give the plaintiffs the chance to, the defendants the chance to fix the language, and then they'd go out in the field with it. Like that's normal, like friction when it comes to those ballot initiatives. The governor didn't derail those. What did derail some of them was some bad signature gathering on the parts of the organizations that ran the petitions. But Governor Whitmer didn't even step in to do the types of things that John Engler did when he was governor to ballot initiative proposals. Now, frankly, I think David probably has some better examples historically, but the easy one for me is the emergency management law, where we have the legislator passing this law, ballot initiative proposal coming into play to reverse it, and then the legislature passing the law again in lame duck, with a budget rider that made it so they couldn't use a ballot initiative process to undo it. And then, frankly, that's how we end up with like the Flint River becoming the source of water for Flint and the Flint water crisis.
Yeah, and I'll just super quickly add, two things to that. The historical context. You're absolutely right, Joe. And Michigan's constitution is written in a way that there's a quirk in it when it comes to, so ballot initiatives are, you're voting to amend or not amend the state constitution. And the way the state constitution is written, part of the amendment process is the state legislature itself can initiate a ballot proposal, and the state legislature itself can take a proposal that has been approved to go on the ballot, and if they enact a law that is close to what that ballot proposal's intent is, then it can supersede the ballot proposal. So the legislature did this with the minimum wage ballot proposal that was going to be on the ballot a few years ago. The emergency manager one was a really, the voters voted and the state legislature said, we know better than you. So we're going to overturn your vote by some of the, constitutionally allowable things they could do. And then we ended up getting the emergency manager system, which of course, the fallout of that is still around with the Flint water crisis. That law, however, is still on the books. So there are a lot of long-term consequences of this happening. The Michigan Constitution was rewritten in the early 60s for the purpose of having one document that would be universally accepted by the state and not be amended again. It was voted with like a 7,000 vote majority. It was extremely slim, and it's been amended, I think, 38 or 39 times since then. So.
And Josh, I know you're somewhat limited as to what you can talk about as a judicial candidate. So please feel free to take that question in any direction you'd like.
I appreciate the inherent flexibility in that statement. So Joe took my answer. I was going to say the same thing, that, democracy is always on the ballot. And I think it also it's in between the times we cast the ballots too. That it really is civic engagement and being aware of what your government is doing, why it's making those choices, where the influences come from, how our national and local debates are framed or cornered or directed, and being aware of those things, just being naturally well informed about the nature of debate, as well as the facts and circumstances relevant to those debates, is really critical. And so I would say it's every election and in between too. It's a full-time job, although you don't have to obsess over it, as many people on this call clearly do, including probably me. But yeah, it's a big question, and I think it's something that the electorate and the public generally always has to be conscious of, because it's always hanging by a thread in the kind of ecological timeline ways, and then even more so periodically in there.
Well, and I kind of want Jim's answer on this. So every 50, 60 years, I think we hit a portion where things are very chaotic. And I would say, we're at that point now, like we were in the 60s with segregation and race relations. How dire could this be?
Well, I think that I think all indications are, from my knowledge and experience, and I would defer to David in terms of some of the finer points from a historical perspective, but I think we're at an inflection point probably like we haven't seen since the Civil War. And the reason for that is that you have so many people that are, literally in the tens of millions of people that seem to prefer personality over the rule of law. And I think and maybe this is a question for Josh as well, when the rule of law loses out to personalities, that's when democracy becomes endangered. There are other inflection points as well. There are other things that can cause that, but I think that's the danger that I see, is that you have people who are people for public office that are openly advocating for essentially to ignore law and to or to ignore the political system, thereby putting at risk the rule of law and in favor of and not even really policy prescription, but really more again, really I think it's really more it's based on personality, right? It's I think we're in danger of really becoming authoritarian, probably as much or more so, certainly since more so than since the 1960s, where I don't think really authoritarianism was hanging in the balance or was sort of hanging like Damocles' sword. But I think our democracy is at the biggest risk since the 1860s. So those are the things that I worry about, right? Is once somebody does it, somebody, and we sort of, hung on, despite the attempts in 2020 to sort of overturn that election, that lie still being spread. People are buying into that, and that failed. But as long as we allow those types of activities to continue, and that's why Steve Bannon's strategy, kind of building from the precinct level up and at the Board of Education level up, so it's all these local races that the strategy is win these races. It's really who controls the elections, right? It's the local elections board, it's the Secretary of State, and governor seats. So that's from my perspective. I think that so what I'm trying to figure out is it as bad as it seems, or is the pendulum going to swing quickly the other way? Because my worry is where is the pendulum? Are we at the apex of it, or is there more to go? So those are the kind of questions that keep me awake at night.
Well, I know David has a point to make here, but some of us are old enough here that we were on the internet in its infancy. And unfortunately, as good as the internet can be, we have an issue where ignorant people are emboldened by their ignorance and love to spout it out constantly.
Well, I think the big hope of the internet in its infancy was it was going to be the democratization of knowledge as opposed to the democratization of misinformation, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I echo most of what you said. I think that the historical comparisons to the 1850s, the decade that preceded the Civil War, are frightening.
right.
The Civil War, of course, is a war that was fought over slavery because the great compromises that had been reached over slavery, as awful as that was, broke down. And so that was the major political issue of the day. Some viewed it as an economic issue, some viewed it as a moral issue, some viewed it as a political issue. It was all three. And ultimately, it broke the country apart. The thing that really did the U.S. Unity end more than anything was when people ignored the rule of law.
Yep.
Supreme Court decisions were made, they were ignored. And the laws were passed to either protect the rights of slave owners, or states passed laws to try to thwart the rights of slave owners. You had a great conflict between state and federal law. You had people ignoring the laws that they didn't agree with and following the laws that they did. And the judiciary, the history of the judiciary in the United States is one that, and Josh, I'm sure you know this, being an attorney, is one that a lot of it is built on tradition and precedent. So the US Constitution grants Congress the authority to create and regulate through the approval of justices, through the size of the judiciary, the entire federal judiciary. And it took several decades of the Supreme Court existing before that court actually had power, because people simply wouldn't follow the rulings. They just ignore them. And the Supreme Court had no means to enforce its rulings. And so if a judge makes a ruling, if there's no means to enforce that ruling, then it's great. The ruling's out there, but what are you going to do with it? It took decades of precedent and people understanding the reason why the concept of judicial review was such an important precedent for the court to establish for itself before it gained that power. But then that power was lost in the decade leading up to the Civil War, because again, people ignored the rulings of the court to such an extent that it essentially lost all of its power. The court itself was very much to blame for this, especially under the Chief Justiceship of Roger Taney and the Dred Scott decision. And so at that highest level, there's always been this fine line between what the Constitution says and what precedent has established. So it's a tricky time to be in. I mean, I ask myself the same question: is it really that bad? And years ago, I had this conversation with my mother. Actually, we were flying across the ocean, so we were on a plane together for a long time. We had a nice chat, and I asked her. I says, "Mom, a lot of people your age look very nostalgic at the 1960s." I says, "But people my age, I look at the 1960s and I see Martin Luther King Jr. being assassinated. I see Robert F. Kennedy being assassinated. I see John F. Kennedy being assassinated. I see riots in front of the Pentagon, massive war protests, 50-some thousand people being killed in Vietnam that were Americans, riots in the streets. Mom, what am I missing here? Was it really that good of a time to be alive?" And she laughed because she knows me, obviously. But she said, "Well, yeah, there were certainly parts about that decade that one maybe isn't so nostalgic about if you look at it that way." And not to make light of this, but I think some parts of the process that the United States is going through right now have always been here. But I'm very alarmed when I hear, for example, the gubernatorial debate that took place last week, the opening, I don't know what you would call it, monologue by Tudor Dixon. If you have not seen that,
Yeah.
I encourage you, if you are a imbiber of alcoholic beverages, to perhaps have one by your side. If you are like me and you are not, you would want to cool it on a coffee before you watch this, because you are going to be amazed. And anybody who's listening to this program, even if you're the most absolute avid partisan, take the partisanship out of your mind for a moment if you are able to do it, and actually listen to every word that Tudor Dixon said. Because what she said was, if the Democratic Party gets elected, well, they're already in the governor's office, they will have all of you in chains and there will be white slavery in this state. That's what she said. Go back and watch it or listen to it. And that is rhetoric that, in my mind, just absolutely far and away surpasses anything I've ever heard in any Michigan gubernatorial campaign. And it is one that I think one should be very concerned with.
I want to interrupt here because I know we have limited time with Joe. He's got about 7 minutes left with us. Joe, why should people vote for you?
That was my next
Why should people vote for me? I mean, like that's a localized issue. And my pitch to voters is that I grew up in the area. My brother and I used to ride our bicycles around. And this seems, I don't want this to seem too wholesome, right? But it's the truth. We used to ride our bicycles around. My parents didn't have to worry at all. And now it's not like that. Like, our roads were built for 30 years and 100,000 residents ago. And I'm focused on issues that really matter to voters, like road safety. The other issue that's really important to me specifically around here is housing affordability, and it's something that I've worked on in some of the most housing scarce places in the country. We're talking about like the Bay Area in California and Denver and Colorado, and the situations over there are dire. But the thing that I want folks to know, even if they're not going to vote for me, even if they're not in my district, is that absolutely can happen in West Michigan if we don't do a better job of building housing for the workers that we're inviting to our community to run our factories. And I think that when it comes to the simplicity of the reasons why to vote for me, they're road safety, they are affordable housing, they are water availability, which some folks don't really understand is not. Their water is extremely scarce in Michigan. We're surrounded by these Great Lakes, but those water tables go a mile or two in, and everything else has to get replenished by rainwater. So if you drive from Holland to Grand Rapids through like Jamestown, Georgetown area, and you see the development in Georgetown, Jamestown is what Georgetown used to look like. And now there are 60,000 people in a township in West Michigan in Ottawa County. And if you ask every legislator in the Capitol where Georgetown is, they will not be able to tell you. Like 90% of them will not be able to tell you. It's the largest township by population in Ottawa County. the fastest growing county in the state. So when it comes to having an understanding of the key facts on the ground, there's one choice between me and my opponent. And when it comes to focus on issues that matter, there's one choice between me and my opponent. When it comes to not being distracted by national level shiny objects, there's clearly only one choice between me and my opponent. So that's why people in Ottawa County, District 2, Holland Township should vote for me, Joe Spalding.
Awesome.
And I want to ask this, Joe, as a
And
follow-up.
I would also say because you drink good beer.
That's true too. Let's say they vote in Lucy.
Yep.
Your next steps.
Yeah, so when it comes to Ottawa Impact, they are going to have the majority in the county commission. So there's probably no material difference between me winning and losing here. So you're not like, people are not going to vote for me to secure or stop a majority for Ottawa Impact on the county commission. That's not a reality. I'm going to have a presence at that county commission now over the next 2 years, no matter what. When it comes to those commission seats, these are 2-year seats. After this year, they kick up and they're going to be 4-year seats. And that's a lot more of a big deal because we're 2 cycles away at that point from redistricting again, right? So when it comes to county redistricting, that's something that's super important to me. And that's, another 8 years out. But we have to make sure that folks see what Ottawa Impact is doing when they take the majority in the commission, whether I'm at the commission table or not. And we have to elevate the conversations that happen there so folks know who to vote for in 2024. So that's what's next for me. Everything this year really has been focused on 2024, more than 2022 anyway, when it comes to my profession. When it comes to working, on campaigns, I work for a group called Distill Social. They're a PAC that focused on social media on the other side of the state. I actually put a comment in the chat on Twitch when we were talking about Grand Ledge, because there was a that situation has been brewing for a long time. Sorry to ADD back to something that was said 20 minutes ago, but I cut a 36-minute documentary about the situation in Grand Ledge and kind of a school board meeting that happened there in 2020 where they went over 30 years of like really, really horrifying racism in the district, over 7 hours of testimony.
Yeah, and fired a superintendent too. It's messy.
Yeah, so Metcalf's lawyer screamed my name at his due process hearing. That was a thing that happened. So
that's been in the paper all around here. For the last 2 years in one form or another. So
yeah, I will say if there's one place that has actively and done the right thing against fighting against the whack jobs that are running for school board, those folks, it's Grand Ledge activists, and they've dubbed them the Kitty Litter Caucus. They have not stopped holding their feet to the fire. And they uncovered quite a bit of particularly around that Jason Devenbauer guy. That guy is probably one of the worst people running for office in the state, and he's running for Grand Ledge School Board. But my next step is to track the Republicans on the far right and make sure that we keep continuing to change the political landscape of Michigan for the better, regardless of what happens in this election.
Well, fantastic. Thank you, Joe. I know you got another interview, and we want to give you a couple minutes to take a break if you need it. So we really appreciate you joining, and we wish you the best of luck.
Appreciate it. It's been fun. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers, Joe.
Yeah, Joe.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
And Josh, I guess maybe the same question for you.
Why
Why Josh? Why Josh Hilgert for circuit court?
So I think, my case would be, I have a reason that I want to be in the office. I think that there's a lot of, that I see the judiciary as poised to make a critical shift from viewing its job as an adjudicator of individuals to public service for intersecting with individuals' lives. It already halfway knows that. I feel as though the court, it's our judges, even our prosecutor and our sheriff, we understand, all of us, that we're encountering people who have trauma, who have just so little resilience. And yet we have a system that is kind of set up for judgment and shame. And so we try to put, foam rubber on the rusty edges of it to try to make it a little nicer. But I think we're on the precipice of trying to say, how do we just look at this and try to process human beings a little differently? And I think my experience as the defender, my engagement in the community, certainly I have I think gone further and pushed harder and understand better what that kind of shift looks like and what that population wants, and would bring in the community to speak for itself with their own lived experiences. And I think Kalamazoo's ready for that. I think that's what it wants. I think I am the candidate for that if people want that. And so we'll find out Tuesday if I'm right.
I think we finally have a public defender on the Supreme Court, right? And I think that you know, the underrepresentation of people who have defended indigent cases in the judiciary, you know, in judgeships is and it's itself a crime, right? The fact that it's mostly people, you know, either I would say, you know, what we think of as the high paid defense attorney or prosecutors that end up in judgeships. And I think that experience, from my perspective, is invaluable for district or circuit court judge.
Well, and as somebody in Josh's district, when I was researching these positions, that's one of the things that drew me to him, is the fact that, okay, this is somebody that is helping people that need help the most.
Absolutely.
And those are my values. So that's who I'm looking to vote for.
So I guess, you know, just as a final thought for me on this is, you know, these are nonpartisan. You're in a nonpartisan race, and I'm not sure what the ballot looks like for your district, for the county or the district specifically. Sometimes judicial races are on the back, right? So I'd just like to remind everyone, when you're voting, don't forget about the things on the back. I think people are flipping the page over because of proposals, but make sure you vote in the nonpartisan judicial races as well.
Thank you, Jim. And thank you, David.
Absolutely.
I too, I have to leave. I meant to tell you before we popped on, but we had a passing in our family that was thanks. It was as good as you could hope. You know, it's rearranged our schedule a little bit. But before I pop off, I want to give you any chance to give me one last, you know, hard question or anything you want to say while you got me here, because I didn't give you fair warning.
No, it's fine. I say thank you so much for joining us. Go
We
take care of your
appreciate
family.
it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Condolences.
We're a family first kind of people.
Absolutely.
And then say when you win, if you wouldn't mind joining us again, so you can talk about your victory.
I'd love to come back. You guys are great. This is a great conversation and good questions too. I really appreciated it.
Thank you.
We're glad you enjoyed it. We are definitely staying on, so we'll say goodbye to Josh. Thank you again for joining us.
Yep. Thank you,
Goodbye,
Josh.
Josh. Good
Thank you,
luck.
gentlemen.
Yep,
Hi,
take care.
Josh.
So we have a lot that we can still dissect. I have David for another hour.
I actually have to go here soon too.
Do you?
I have a few minutes, yeah.
Okay. Well, Jim has a few minutes before he has to run away. So I want to talk about some of these things that, you know, are making news that are stupid as shit. I've kept the cursing down while we had candidates. All bets are off.
The civility goes.
It definitely does.
You're talking about the batshit crazy.
Batshit crazy.
Normal crazy.
Correct.
Right?
Supposedly furries running around in school using litter boxes.
Yep.
This shit ain't happening, people. Okay. I'm sorry to dispel your stupidity, but there's nobody running around using a litter box in school, because I don't know any janitor that would clean that shit up,
Right.
but I know some janitors.
Yeah, and you know, one of the interesting things that popped in my mind when right as Joe was concluding his thoughts with us about Grand Ledge, and I didn't even think this would come up in our discussion, but a lot of people don't know this. Grand Ledge, its claim to fame is a Michigan governor who's from there, Frank Fitzgerald.
Yep.
And Fitzgerald was governor in the 1930s, 2 non-consecutive terms. And back then governors were elected for 2-year terms, but he died in office and pretty much half the town is named after him. He had some really ugly ties to a KKK type organization in Michigan called the Black Legion, including some family ties and people that he put in public office while he was governor. And so Grand Ledge has had an interesting past that every now and then seems to resurface. when it comes to, well, race and politics and intertwining. And I bet you Joe knew that, because he's definitely a guy that's done his homework, but he had to leave, and I certainly wasn't going to throw that out to him and give him 10 seconds to reply.
Since you do have to leave us, Jim, thoughts on this election? I mean, you've given a lot so far, but
I really do think that in a very real sense, and I agree with both of the candidates that were on, that democracy is always on the ballot. But I think that we're at an inflection point, right? As we talked about this, before. I just think it's so important that everyone just get out, and again, I'm a former Republican, and not just like a Republican voter. Like, I was an elected member of the Republican Party in Michigan. When I say elected, I mean I was elected as an officer of the party by those precinct delegates, right? That Steve Bannon is trying to encourage people to run. So for folks that don't know the way that the party system works, is that precinct delegates, people are elected at the local level, at your polling place. You elect a certain number of delegates to a county convention. That county convention then elects delegates to the state convention, which in turn elects delegates to the national convention. So this really all does start at the grassroots level. And for the first time in my life, just to tell you how important these things are and why I'm so worried, for the first time in my life, not only did I see people campaigning for precinct delegate in my precinct, but people spending money. And it was money that was not coming out of their pockets, right? This is money that's coming from organizations that are interested in basically in the Republican Party becoming an authoritarian group, and that scares the hell out of me. And I think that there's I think a lot of people are being misled. As we talked about, right? There's the crazy, there's the stupid, and there's the batshit crazy, right? Stupidity. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, they're buying into this whole idea that this is about the kids, that this is about the election or whatever. It's not. It's about a small number of people securing power for themselves for various reasons, and ignoring the will of the people and the rule of law to boot. And that, to me, is the thing that worries me the most about say the last 4 to 5 years.
Well, and you and I talked about this the other day. So, when we're looking at kind of this precipice that we're at, you take those batshit crazy people and their ideas of what are out there. And the one I love the most is Antifa does all this stuff, and they forget the fact that if somebody's Antifa, that means they're anti-fascist, like my grandfather was when he landed on Normandy in 1940.
Yeah. That's anti-fascist,
right?
For sure.
And they sit there and they throw that around like it's a bad thing.
Right.
Fascists are bad people.
Always have been. Always.
There's no middle ground there. So if you want to run around and say Antifa's this, Antifa's that, you can do that all you want. And again, the organization doesn't exist.
Right.
They're just people that are against fascism. And
pro-justice and things like that, right? There's various agendas going on with that, and calling themselves Antifa is I think that's sort of a brilliant move politically, because there is some other stuff going on there. But yeah, it's not like this is an organized group of people that are out to turn your children into Black Panthers or into or to turn them gay or something like that, right? That's not the idea. It's they're in opposition to injustice.
Yeah, I think that's really important to note. Over 21 million people have voted already
in Michigan, or just in general?
In general.
It can't be in Michigan. So not 21 people in Michigan.
Yeah, in the United States.
Well, it doesn't surprise me.
I'm one of those.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I will be tomorrow. I'm gonna drop my ballot off on the way to work. The voting from home, what we used to call it, absentee ballot. That's something that in most of the country, when you ask anybody but a firebrand extremist politician, people support it overwhelmingly. Arizona has one of the highest absentee ballot rates in the entire country, and historically, it's been one of the most Republican voting states in the union.
Mhm.
And it was a Republican legislature that got absentee balloting for everybody in Arizona. So I mean, it's very popular. The reason why people are opposed to it now, of course, is because the people that are opposed to it primarily are fearful that it's going to increase voter turnout and lead to people voting them out of office.
Mhm.
They're also afraid that when people have a ballot in their hand for a month, they actually have time to research all
Exactly.
of those people down the ballot,
Yeah.
the ones on the backside of the ballot that you
Uh-huh.
mentioned, because they do. And it's not, oh yeah, today's election day. You show up to the poll, you got a ballot that's almost as long as the Bible, and halfway through it, you don't know who any of those people are. You don't know what the positions they're running for are. So you either fill in Mickey Mouse in the write-in, or you leave it blank, or you close your eyes and scratch a name. And that is not, it's not a good way of running an election. While with absentee ballot, people actually have time to figure out who these people
Yep.
are and what they do. And I actually think that's part of the reason why some of these positions that normally don't get a lot of press have. And you mentioned the party delegates to the county
Mhm.
conventions. I actually was over at a friend's house earlier this year. He lives in my neighborhood, so I walked my dog over to chat with him, and he said to me, he says, "Now I'm going to be on the ballot for, in this case, it's Democratic Party in Ingham County. I'm going to be on a ballot, Democratic Party, Ingham County, and you'll see my name on there." He says, "I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but you'll see my name on there, and that is me." So,
Yeah, it's really interesting about that. I've never seen these be competitive before. So, first time I actually was on the ballot a couple times to be a precinct delegate as well, and I never had any opposition. The first time I think I was living in Ann Arbor, and there was something like 3 open seats for the precinct, and there was just my name. And then another time, which is not uncommon in Ann Arbor, I was running as a Republican. And then another time when I was still a member of the party, it was I think there was 2 open seats and I was the only name on it, right? So even if I voted for myself, I was guaranteed to be a delegate to the county convention. And this year in Byron Township, where I live, in Byron Center, there were 3 openings for my precinct and 9 people on the ballot, and they were literally campaigning. I mean, lawn signs, mailers, things like that. And I've just never seen anything like that before. But again, it's this Steve Bannon strategy of flood the zone with bullshit and get get people who don't know what the hell they're doing, stir them up with misinformation, get them on the ballot, and then you can control the party from the ground up. And that's what they're doing.
Well, that's why we see CRT as such a hot button issue.
Yep. Yeah.
Because they're going to turn everybody against the white kids.
Right.
Yeah, they're not teaching that in
Well,
primary
critical
school.
race theory is taught only in law school.
It is.
And
Yeah.
It's a theory.
Yeah. Well, and it's not only that, but it's a framework for the justice system. It has nothing to do with teaching anybody about that white people are evil or anything like that. It's a judicial. I mean, it's a judicial framework is what it is.
Yep.
It has nothing to do with what they're describing, and it's something that I don't remember that Tucker Carlson or somebody on Fox News brought up, and everybody just kind of glommed onto that term, and it's meaningless.
Well, and I know my education history wise at Plainwell, I know where we stopped. We didn't talk about the Vietnam War. We never got there. I don't think we talked about World War II. We didn't get there. We spent so much time, in the first 100 years of this country that we didn't get to anything that, actually affected any of us.
When I was in school, we actually had a course called American Conflict, which was about World War II and about Vietnam, and one called America Between the Wars, which was basically, it was about the 50s, but it's also about the social change in the 60s, because you never got to it in your survey level course, right? Your intro level course.
yeah, and I took an AP history class in high school, and that's when I first learned about some of those things. But Vietnam was, that was a fresh wound. There were a lot of people that taught in our building that were Vietnam vets, or of that age for sure. So it was a difficult subject to teach, and I can understand that very well. I mean, I'm not unsympathetic to that, but critical race theory. I think with the Tucker Carlsons of the world, I mean, they are very good at taking something that they know darn well that their listeners the viewers will just know absolutely nothing about, but it'll have
Yep.
one or two words.
Yep.
Used to be called dog whistle politics. They threw the dog whistle out. They don't need it anymore. Now they can get a megaphone and shout exactly what they think. And so you've got the British have a term for this this type of person that the Tucker Carlsons of the world aim for. They call him a gammon. Gammon is British word for ham, and a ham's red. And a gammon-faced individual is just red and screaming and so pissed off at everything in the world that he thinks is wrong. And usually these are people that have benefited the most from the social economic structure of society. So they theoretically should be the people that are the least wound up. But it's the opposite. Tucker Carlson, oh, I know what's going to really piss these people off. We'll tell them that their children are being taught that white people are evil and they're going to enslave or other white people if they get into power and use critical race theory. And well, okay, wait a minute here. Let's step back. Do you actually know what critical race theory is?
Right.
Critical race theory is being critical of race. Well, no, that's not actually what it is.
Right.
Doesn't matter. That the conversation, if it even got that far, it would end there.
Yep.
And
it's-
so
it's
now,
short-circuited.
yeah, and you've got, I mean, I hate to use this term because it's overused, but in this case, it's apt. They weaponize things that they know nothing about and take advantage of people's ignorance, insert this into debates where it actually has no need to be, because it's not an issue that would ever be actually used, such as, legal critical race theory in a public school, but yet they do it. And then all of a sudden you've got the news media plastering this terminology all over every story, and you got the community whipped up in a frenzy. Wow, we've accomplished what we wanted to do. If we're the weaponizers that sought to get people on our side through this. And I see it happening in a lot of issues. It's not just critical race theory, but obviously the gay rights, LGBTQ, which Joe was talking about. That's the same thing. I mean, we had I can't remember what school it was around here, but I think 7 or 8 years ago. Oh my God, they're going to build a unisex bathroom in the school. Do you know what that means? Yeah, it means a bathroom that's got a door that locks and has one toilet in it.
Right, exactly.
That's what it
Yeah.
means.
Yeah, if it's an airport, it's
Wait,
a
it
family
doesn't mean the
restroom,
men
right?
and women are going to go to the bathroom at the same
Yeah,
time.
exactly. And I'm thinking to myself, don't take your kids into a restaurant bathroom in Europe. You're not going to,
Yeah,
you're gonna get
exactly.
shocked.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, and even before that, I mean, there, places for the last 15, 20 years have had those family bathrooms. So
Exactly.
again,
Yeah.
a much more friendly place for a dad to take his daughter who's
Yeah,
Or
and-
just to
mother
have
take
more
his
room to
son
change
when
a
it gets
kid's
to the
diaper.
point
Yeah.
of-
Yeah.
And it's funny because I remember driving out east a few years ago, and I pulled off to use the men's room on the Ohio Turnpike, and which is a horrible road to drive on for a
I'm
lot of
sorry.
reasons. But anyways, I'm in the bathroom doing my business, and there's 2 women in there cleaning. Nobody batted an eye at it. They're like, I gotta clean the John, and my shift's almost up, so I don't care if there's men in here. I'm gonna come in here, mop the floor, and clean the sinks and leave. Nobody threw a fit about that. So
I can honestly say I don't care who's in the bathroom when I gotta take a whiz.
As long
I
as
just
there's,
don't care.
as long as there's an open urinal, I'm fine. I
Yeah.
don't care who else
that's
is
right.
there.
But
I mean, if they're
yeah.
leaning over my shoulder, maybe I got an issue. Maybe I don't. I don't know.
yeah, that's
Just
right.
saying.
Might depend
That
on-
depends on who it is. So yeah.
I mean, if next leaning over my shoulder, I'm
I
more
will-
worried about him touching
I
me.
have to say this, Mr. Levy, you're not matchy.
I am not matchy. I wore my boat shirt.
I like
Makes
that.
I
sense.
don't know if you noticed Joe's shirt. It said vote for the
That-
beer
that
party.
was-
Beer party.
It
That
is.
was awesome.
When
I
when
want
was
that
for
shirt.
beer, when I was on student government at Michigan, we had it was, again, this kind of gets into the whole thing about messaging people not knowing what's going on, right? They called themselves the keg party, and like 5 guys got together from some fraternity or whatever, called themselves a keg party, and we had proportional voting. They won the top 5 slots.
Nice.
They started handing out root beer barrels at all of the, because they were like shaped like little kids
Yeah.
at all the
Yeah.
student government meetings. Every time somebody asked or answered a question, they'd fling one of those root beer barrels. They turned out to be a lot of fun, but they won simply because they called themselves the keg party.
I love
Yeah.
root beer
I
barrels.
do too.
Yeah,
So
I do
good.
too. I do too.
I know you got to get heading
I
out
do
of here,
about 10
Jim.
more minutes, yeah.
Oh, you got 10 more minutes? All right.
Okay.
Because we are Bucks and Brews, let's talk economy for a hot minute here.
All right.
Nick and I talked about inflation a few weeks back, and we talked about the fact that we were in a recession because we had 2 straight quarters of the negative GDP. So anybody know what the last quarter showed?
I do.
I don't know the number, but I know
Increase.
there's an increase.
It was growth, I think
Yep.
2.5%.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah, I thought it was about, yeah.
And
Well, I like how the first thing that the Fed does is raise interest rates and cause the stock market to drop.
Yep.
I
As
mean,
intended.
they have to get inflation under control. And even though it's been better the last 3-4 months, it's still way too high. They kept the interest rates way too low for way too long.
Yeah.
Well, there's the whole demand side of it, right? Which is all that can address. The issue now, and the issue that's been causing inflation primarily has been on the supply side,
Mhm.
though. And what can the Fed do about that?
Nothing.
Right?
No, all they can do is control rates.
Right. So
And that's it. So that there's similarities, but also then differences with the last time there's really high inflation in this country, which was in the late 70s
right,
and early
stagnation.
80s. And one commonality is the energy market, which is
Yep.
by and large out of the control of what anybody in one country can do. And the Federal Reserve doesn't set oil prices.
Right.
But then-
Exactly.
Oh, come on. I thought the president set oil prices.
Yeah. So, and of course, if energy prices go up, everything goes up in price
Mhm.
because you can't do anything without energy.
Right.
You can't make anything, you can't grow crops, etc. But then you have just a multitude of sort of every bad thing that could happen that would lead to inflation happening.
Yep.
Very low interest rates for a very long time. Crisis in world commodity markets because of grain shortages from the war in Ukraine, energy. And then on top of all that, you still have the huge shock that the pandemic has caused the economy. And then being an economy that has over the last 20 years relied very heavily on Chinese manufacturing.
Mhm.
And China has decided, and Xi made it very clear at the coronation of him as the next emperor of China that happened there a couple weeks ago, that
Yep.
the economy is not the priority now. It
No.
is our power. Our
Exactly.
being, the Chinese
Yep.
Communist Party. So it's
Well, it's
the
economic
stock
warfare
market-
too, right? So that's why, we've had time to iron out some of the supply chain issues, but a lot of that is the Chinese are withholding that to their own fiscal detriment, but they're doing that to fuck with our supply chain.
Absolutely there.
And one of the interesting that's happening right now, though, is that the US dollar is increasing in value dramatically. And part of that is because the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates. It lessens the money supply. In that case, it's sort of very old school, simple macroeconomics. Less money supply, higher interest on borrowing, the currency is going to be worth more. But then you have the supply chain
Right.
problems coming in too, which actually has an effect of increasing the value of the dollar, because in this case, the Chinese are not purchasing or getting as much American dollars through the American purchase of Chinese goods. So that's another thing then that actually shrinks the amount of dollars circulating in the world economy. And that's part of the reason why the value of the dollar's gone up so much.
Well, it's happening with the various sanctions too, right? Within Russia and things like that, because they were hoarding American dollars for a while. Russia was.
Absolutely, as was
Yep.
the Chinese,
Mhm.
as were the Chinese. Yep.
Yep.
So I think that what's going to be interesting about this economy is because of the demographic shift that's going on right now with all the baby boomers aging out of the workforce eventually, Gen X being sort of sandwich generation that didn't have enough people to replace all the boomers,
Mhm.
you actually are going to have, from every economic forecasting model I've seen, even if the economy enters into a serious recession, you're probably still going to have low unemployment.
Yep.
Which is really a situation that I don't know if anybody that is alive right now would have ever lived through. I mean, the last time the US had this shortage, this degree of a shortage of labor was after World War II.
Yep.
And obviously most of those people are either passed away or extremely old
Mhm.
right now. So it's
Yeah.
not something.
Certainly out of the labor market themselves.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
I want to see if somebody can answer this because I'm ignorant to
It's
this.
7.
So thank you.
I was going to say 6.
724.
My mother says to me yesterday,
I-
have you heard about this diesel shortage? They're not going to have any diesel and nobody's going to get to drive. And
Uh-huh.
who's heard of this? Oh, I'm obviously not everybody.
Yeah, so same thing as the
Oh,
gas aspect.
I haven't heard of it.
yeah, diesel, if there's a shortage of diesel, there'll be a shortage of gasoline or kerosene
Right,
of home
yeah.
heating oil. It's
I mean, it's
refined-
certainly happening worldwide
Yeah.
because of what's happening with Russia, but I'm not aware of any particular concerns in the US.
Oh, supposedly it's running out in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
And there will be none.
It's this next big scare thing that's
Yeah.
going on.
Well,
Yeah,
that's basically what I told her.
I'd be surprised. I mean, and on top of that, I mean, the United States, our passenger vehicles, we never got nearly into the diesels that they
Right.
did in Europe and Asia. So
Right. Plus, we have strategic reserves of both unrefined petroleum, refined petroleum, and diesel. So I'm not.
Yeah.
None of that's been released. So
and a lot of oil refineries. I mean,
Right.
all over the country. Michigan has
Yeah.
a huge oil refinery down by Detroit, and there used to be a big one up in Elma. It's not
Was-
there anymore. One
So in
Like I
Northern
said,
Indiana,
it
too,
talks to,
right?
it
So-
could be something as simple as supplies of things they used to make like biodiesel
Yeah.
are running low.
Yeah.
That's different. That's not diesel. That's,
Right.
Yeah.
you know,
Well, and I figured it was a scare tactic because, that's what we like to do here is
Well,
scare the shit out of
particularly
everybody.
before an election.
Yeah. I told her, I said, don't worry about I'm not worried about
Yeah,
that.
it's one of those things like it used to always be that whoever was not in power or whoever was in power, the other party talk about how they're gonna destroy Social Security, right? Like that was a perennial thing, or not perennial, but every quadrennial, every time there's a presidential election, the party out of power is talking about how Social Security is gonna be destroyed, right? For about 2 weeks before the election. So yeah, I think your mom's responding to another political tactic.
Yeah, I told her not to worry about it, and she usually listens to me, luckily.
Yeah, it was all over. No, it was all over social media. And
Yep.
And it's the worst thing to get your news from social media, people. Please don't do that.
Oh yeah.
Vet your
yeah.
sources,
Yeah.
because there's so many dumbass shit you read on social media.
Well, I heard that the assault at Michigan Stadium was the tunnel's fault on social media, so it must be the tunnel.
That's a fact, actually.
Yeah.
And that cop was paid off. The one that was just standing
No,
there.
the tunnel itself. The
tunnel. The
Yeah.
tunnel took the helmet off and started bashing the poor.
Yes.
You didn't. So you didn't see it do it. I'm
or
surprised.
everything about Pelosi's husband getting,
Yeah.
Let's touch on that
Action.
briefly.
Briefly, I get it.
So this went from a nut job broke into the Speaker of the House's house and beat the shit out of her husband with a hammer, to now the talking point is it's his gay lover and they had a lover's quarrel.
Well, of course it is.
or
Because
it's
that's-
something now where because the security cameras at the Capitol were off or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
I took a quick break at work the other day and I went out in my car and listened to the radio for a minute, like I sometimes do. And I had it on a station that I normally wouldn't listen to that time of day. And Glenn Beck came on the air.
Oh, he's a peach, isn't he?
Oh yeah, and his take on it is that I'm not going to defend what had happened to Nancy Pelosi's husband, but then he went and spent 20 minutes explaining why the Democratic Party was the one who was to blame
Yep.
for her husband having his brains bashed in with the guy with a hammer.
Yep.
It's quite remarkable, actually, to hear that the way he in his own little mind came up with this logic that it was horrible what happened to her. I would never defend violence, but the Democratic Party has created a system of violence in this country that is so bad, it's so out of control. It was their fault the Capitol riots happened.
Yep.
It was actually Nancy Pelosi's fault that she got her gavel stolen out of her office and a bunch of furniture broken and threatened with her life by guys that came into the Capitol building. And because the Democratic Party is responsible for all that, it's their fault, therefore, that her husband got his brains bashed in when the house was broken into.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Like when we live in a non-intellectual or anti-intellectual world, though, those types of things make sense to people, right?
And I can't even say it's just on social media, right?
No.
Like there's a commercial out there right now, and I wish I knew exactly what it's for, but it talks about this guy. He wants to defund the police, and I don't remember the other one, but and then all of a sudden they're like, yep, he just wants everybody to die and this and that. And I was like, holy crap, like you took that like 2 seconds because he said, hey, I don't want the police to be fully funded, to like, yep, I think the world should just be ran over by everybody and no cops should be around. And I was like, holy crap, how did you even just do that in like a matter of 2 seconds?
The Tudor Dixon
So
intro, like Dave was saying earlier. Oh, I saw that. I thought this can't be. I literally questioned whether I'd woken up in a parallel universe.
I did too. I
Yeah.
did too. I was absolutely. I'm not left speechless by much. That left me speechless. It really did. I was just,
I did,
because-
yeah.
yeah, you looked at her performance in the first debate and looking at this just from an outsider point of view, after that I thought, well, you know what? Maybe it'll be a close election. I mean, she actually looked pretty good in that. And then the second debate, her opening stanza,
Yep.
then I thought, oh my goodness, this is terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
Well, you know, it's one of those things where because I'm pro-choice, I hear from all of the pro-birth people that I kill babies and I suck their blood,
Oh, yeah.
which
Right, like.
I have not killed one baby.
Oh, but David, you have to realize that's part of the anti-Semitism
Oh,
that's
of
directed
course.
toward you as well.
Absolutely it is.
Well, because everybody knows you're right, because you're half Jewish, right?
Right,
And everybody knows that.
right. It's the absurdity out there is just unfreaking real.
Bloodline.
Yeah, it's, it's like, I've heard people defend, for example, Russia.
Mhm.
In the invasion of Ukraine. One of the defenses, well, yeah, they had to go in there and take Zelensky out because he's a Nazi.
Yeah,
Vladimir Zelensky is Jewish.
right.
Yes.
He may be a lot of things, but I am 100% certain a Nazi is not one of them.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But yet-
if I was betting on Nazis, I'd bet closer on Putin than Zelensky.
But this kind of misinformation is, I mean, it's everywhere. And I always tell my students the following. I always tell them, remember what Abraham Lincoln said, don't believe everything that you read online.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
I remember Thomas Lockwood was one of my favorite teachers, and he had a poster in his classroom that said, don't believe everything you hear and only half of what you see. And I always kept that to heart because, you know, your eyes can play tricks on you and most people are going to lie to you anyways. So you have to really look in to find the truth. And we're so emboldened with, you know, ignorant and stupid that they think it's, you know,
Well, I think that's the real
gospel.
thing. We were talking earlier about sort of what the internet has become, right? And I think what it's become is, back in the day, we had filters, right? We had a mass media, but it was nationalized. You had local newspapers and things like that, but there was a process of vetting information. And now there no longer is, right? So now you can, you know, and I say information, use the term loosely, processing information, misinformation, whatever it is. But when something, you know, somebody shoots a video or they post something on the internet or whatever, not only does that get out there faster to more people, there's no vetting process, right? So there's nobody fact checking before it gets out there. And then you've got built a huge audience of people that, for whatever reason, are reinforcing that viewpoint. And so I think the other thing that keeps me awake at night is, have we truly become a factless society?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a colleague of mine who very unexpectedly passed away in May, and it was a total shock. I mean, I didn't even know he was sick, and he was only 50 or 51, but he and I used to get in this conversation sometimes, and he said this to me one day, and it's always stuck with me. He said, just something to think about. If the US was ever to be in a civil war again, would we really need to fight it by shooting each other? Maybe we would fight it the way we're fighting it right
I think
now.
we're in a civil war.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely.
And he, you know, when he said that, I kind of got like chills down my back. I was actually getting ready to go into a class and teach, and he had just gotten out of one, and we were chatting about this sort of thing, talking about an article I had my students read. And when he said that to me, I was like, wow, that's like, you know, there's something to think about there. Yep.
Well, Dave, I don't think we met before. It's been a pleasure. I do have to
Absolutely.
go now, and I hope
Yep.
we can. I hope our paths intersect again soon.
I do
And,
too.
And gentlemen, as always, thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for joining us. Nick, I think we could probably wrap up here in a minute.
Yeah, works.
Jim,
So I do want to divert us for a second here because, you know, I got to work on the cruise episode. We had a lot of wind when we were up at the pool, which I didn't think of because I'm not a professional at this. So there is, and so I have to try and remove some of that. But while thinking of it, I kind of want to thank some of the people we met on the cruise. Huge shout out to all of our staff on Royal, especially Dave and Leandro, Raymond, Naz, Omar, and Mo, and then the two best waiters ever, Rex and Alberto.
Hey, you said it right.
I did say it right. Just they were lovely people. It was great to meet Emily and Ian. They got engaged on their birthday, which was awesome. They also found out that the carrot cake was not very good that night.
Right, carrot cake sucked ass. Note itself, don't eat carrot cake on the Royal Caribbean cruise.
We
Want to do see this as a scam call?
Yeah.
Hello, it's Nick. Come on, give it to me. Give it to me.
Nobody's there.
Nothing.
Probably
Bullshit.
somebody that was going to ask if you were voting for Green Lizardman.
Probably.
I actually, let's see. Don't mind about who I'm voting for, okay?
I'm gonna vote for the crab people.
I also wanted to give a shout out to Chris from the Mickey's Marvels podcast. He's going to do something with us.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Caitlin beat him at Heroes and Villains trivia. I was very impressed with that. So yeah, we had a really good time on the cruise. I can't wait to go back in February with my wife. I know that Mike and I are planning on a visit to Lansing here soon-ish. We'll get a hold of the professor and we will set that up. We're going to do a baseball episode. I don't know, maybe next week, maybe the week after. We'll find a time. We'll talk about the wrap up of the season since we didn't do one preseason. And I'm just throwing this out there. When it gets nice out again, anybody wants to come over on the porch and watch TV, I got a projector. I'm going to project shit and sit on the porch and watch some, I think some baseball movies because I love baseball movies.
And maybe plan for opening day of next year if it's not, 28 degrees and snowing.
Yeah, I would love that.
It's gonna be 28 degrees.
And it probably will be 28 degrees and snowing, but maybe we can be nice to the weather gods between now and then.
Yes, exactly.
There's no genre of sport that has as many good movies as baseball.
No, and
You
we
think
talked
of like 3 or
about this.
4 good football movies, 3 or 4 good basketball movies, maybe one good hockey movie and slapstick and
Well, I mean, you got Face Off, you got Mighty Ducks, and
Miracle.
Miracle.
I guess, yeah.
So there
Oh,
are
yeah,
a
3 or
few, but
4.
baseball has the
Baseball.
best sports movies.
Yes.
Oh yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
And
They can
Costner's
be
in 3 of
dramatic,
them.
they can be comedic, it doesn't matter what they are, they're good.
Let's
Yeah,
say baseball
agree.
technically.
I want final thoughts. Professor, give us your final thoughts here.
Final thoughts are, as long as people want our democratic system of elections in our republic to survive, it will. But if people don't want it to survive anymore, it won't. And that's both a blessing and a curse of the system, because what I'm really getting at is elections work only when people respect the results and follow them. And when that no longer happens, then the whole system collapses. So let us hope that cooler heads prevail no matter what the result of the election now and the ones that will hopefully come in the future is.
Well, I really hope we have record turnout voter wise in this midterm because people need to exercise that right.
I agree.
I don't think we'll have too much negative on this one. I mean, it's not a presidential, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's definitely not.
I tonight's episode was quick and it was more centralized. It is tough to talk to a potential judge who
Mhm.
can't give his right. I mean, he can't be an opinionated person, which is one thing you have to respect. But
Yeah.
being a person, I mean, honestly, I think out of the 4 of us, I've been in front of a judge
Way more than the rest of us.
right? So it's like, my mind has just a million questions that I want to ask and I want to go with, and especially because like where and like I wish I could just dive back into it with him, because right he did a lot of oh gosh, I can't think of the name of the thing.
Public defender.
Yeah, well, besides that, sorry, you get the free help or whatever, legal aid.
Yeah, legal aid.
yeah.
Yeah, so
Legal
you
aid.
get a lot of legal, and so it's like, right, like, it's the people I go against, it's the things that I do this, and it's like, right, like, I would just love to dive into that and have fun. Joe, I was really happy to hear him say that he hopes to win, but even if he does win, it's not going to change things. Like, he understands, like, I'm just starting a presence to make it say, hey, I'm not going to be the one to change this, but like, I'm going to have this opportunity. I like that. Like, he seems like a great guy that's
does.
got a good head on his shoulders. So very smart.
Yeah, very well informed.
Right,
Very
and knows where he wants to be. Like, so, again, it's not my district. That's out in Holland. For some reason, I thought he was coming over into the Jamestown, Georgetown area or whatever. But no, and I could, as much as I hate politics and I think they're dumb and annoying to talk about, unlike what you guys love to do it. I think we had a good conversation, great education, right? Like, quick to the points type of things. And, unlike all you guys, I'm the only one that got to drink with these guys. So when I see Your Honor up there, I'm gonna be like, hey,
I had a beer with him.
how's that bud treating you, right? But he's, let's say, and it's about building relationships with these people and getting to that next level is exactly what they're talking, right?
Well, and we plugged the show so much on the cruise
Yeah.
that I'm sure we're going to pick up some listeners, especially from the staff. And one of the things we really talked about is we wanted, just more awareness over what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you weren't there. I told your wife, because it was like at the end of what was going to hit me. I was like, they make $1,000 or whatever,
Yeah.
Plus tips or whatever it is. So I don't know. But I said, let's figure $2,000. I was like, man, between David and myself, we could probably afford $2,000 for the month. I was like, and then we just have ourselves personal waiters, and they live in the USA, so it's better for them. And I was like, sure, I'll be a stepping stone, but my one condition will be they have to train the next person before they leave, right? Like,
my God, did Dave take care of us?
Right. So you'll learn. It's funny because normally it's the person that has the money hanging out, but they did a great job at pouring alcohol.
They did. Mike, your final thoughts?
Not much. It was interesting learning a little bit more about certain things, and always love the professor's historic take on stuff.
I do really appreciate that. Both you and Jim gave a really nice dynamic to this because you have so much to draw on for this conversation.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed having that opportunity with Jim. Absolutely invite me on the next time he's on. He's definitely a gentleman I'd like to get to know a little more. Very
Yeah,
nice.
you and him would hit it off very, very well. Nick, hit us.
So everybody, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, tell your family. We're going to try to get this episode up before the election, as quick as possible. We appreciate you. Shout out to Bud Light, I guess, and we had New Holland Dragon's Milk, and that was
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. We'll have to look it up, but thanks for joining us again. Like, subscribe, and share. That's the biggest way to get us out there. You can find us on any podcasting thing out there.
Yep, pretty much.
If not, tell us and we'll get ourselves there.
Yeah, no kidding. And if you want some merch, we always got merch. So
Unless it's in my car.
that's true. He didn't bring any on the boat. None. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we will talk to you again very, very soon.
You've dialed in
To Box and Brews, you might hear something
you can use.
like tips on your cash and tips on the suds.
You're gonna want to
The
use
smarts of these
because
stuff.
they know the
And
brews.
they know the box, and they know they can't help the stubborn fucks.
So listen up, cause shit's not funny.
Save yourself some
Beer money, bucks,
and brews.
Bucks and
bucks,
brews.
And brews.
brews.
Bucks and brews.